Good evening, Vancouver, and welcome back to Canucks After Dark here on a Monday, the first show of April, and it's not a very happy one. As always, joined by my co-host Canuck Clay. How are you doing today, Clay?
Parker, I am fine. I'm out of protocol, as you know. I feel a lot better now. Thank you. It was sounding a little rough last week, but maybe not even as rough as our hockey team. But I know we'll get to that. How are you? How are you?
I am good.
Good.
It's been not a great week for the team, so I've been just sort of ignoring as much as possible. But I have regrouped, I have gathered information, and I am ready to drop hot takes and complain about this hockey team.
We would
And
expect nothing less from you, brother. Nothing less. Nothing less.
what is life about if not to complain about the Vancouver Canucks? That's what I always say.
It's a good
Um,
attitude.
we've got a few things to talk about tonight. Bruce Boudreau, Patrick Alvin, a little bit,
Yep.
Tucker Poolman, the woes of the last couple of weeks in crunch time for the team and what it maybe means for the team going forward. The two games that happened. I guess there's probably a couple of games this week. I would imagine Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday. Three
Saturday.
games this week. Probably meaningless. Watch the Canucks win all three and they'll win the next six. And then everyone's like, oh, maybe they do something. Probably not. But we'll talk about those as well. But where do you want to go first? Where
I
should we
know you
start?
always, yeah, I know you always ask me, and you're so kind to let me start off. But creature of habit, and we want to end on a good note, or at least a not so sad note. So let's recap these two games. Only two games since the last time we chatted.
Yeah. First one was not great. Wednesday, March 30th, St. Louis 4, Vancouver 3. I think I've blocked most of this out of my memory. There's two games against St. Louis, so I got to remember which one was which. This is
Yeah.
the one where Chason scored and everyone
Yes.
celebrated, and then they lost anyways.
Chase on that was the nice feed from Richardson behind the net, and that was the first goal. We survived the first period, so kudos to us. I don't know why I'm patting my back. It's not like you and I were playing. Maybe we should. Well, at least you should. And then Chase on opens the scoring, and everything's good. Everything's good until I guess St. Louis started playing better and
Yeah.
beat us.
Yeah, so
I
it
barely remember
ends up
this one.
being 3-2 after the second period. Elias Pettersson with a goal in there.
That's right.
In the third period, they get scored on by Nathan Walker, which is kind of sad. And then Elias Pettersson scores late, and the Canucks can't tie it up, and they lose that game. They basically got outplayed in the second period, in the first period, and they came back a little bit in the third. But a
Right.
pretty low event game. There's only like 50 shots total in the entire game. But hey, at least Elias Pettersson got 2 points, 2 goals.
Mhm.
That's nice to see. But man, basically it was really crunch time, right? They had to
Yes.
basically win out at this point. They
Yeah.
had to go, what was it, 11 out of the 14, and they lose this game, so then it drops, and then it's 11 out of the 13, which just gets more and more unlikely.
I do remember. It takes me a couple minutes, Parker, to jog my memory, and I did have a foggy brain last week. But yes, this is the game where special teams, surprise, surprise, killed us again. Not only did St. Louis go 1-for-1, we went 0-for-1, but this is the one where we actually allowed the shorthanded goal against momentum. We were up 2-1 after PD's nice goal, and then he actually, tried to maybe do a little too much, gave the puck up
Right.
in the middle of the ice. Quinn Hughes, who's not the fastest skater, but he's a quick skater, as we've talked about, caught flat-footed, and Thomas just blew by him.
I didn't know the Canucks were bad on special teams. That's the first time I'm hearing of this.
You're a good
Yeah,
man.
it's a real issue.
Yeah.
And so we get to the game. Was this yesterday? I guess. Yesterday afternoon, an early one, a 4 p.m. Matinee game, Vegas in Vancouver. And the Canucks just came out so slow in this game. They were lethargic. They just got run out of the building in the first period. And it's been the story of this Canucks team. The slow starts, the third period comeback, and the loss in OT. It is the textbook Vancouver Canucks 2022 hockey game. And I mean, it's just unfortunate.
It's maddening, and no one said as much as they needed to that they were going to win out. But and I'll ask you about the slow starts once we get through this recap. But I was at this game, Parker, and yeah, it was maddening. And then the third period, it's exciting. JT Miller scores on the nice feed from Ekman Larson. Then Horvat scores without touching the puck in a weird goal. Yeah. And then there's big controversy at the arena because I think a lot of people there, Parker, thought actually the goal wasn't going to count. They were reviewing it, but no, I think some astute fans knew that they were trying to figure out if it was both power plays done or only one or all, if you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So, and of course they deemed it part of the second power play. So therefore the guy comes out of the box and the Canucks do no longer have the power play. So tricky, a matter of literally split seconds. Would have made a difference. I don't know. You'd like to think you want that chance though, for sure.
Yeah, that one was weird because you watch the replay and you watch the slow-mo replay.
Yeah.
And I'm counting 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 seconds on the slow-mo replay. Yeah. Now they record all the cameras. They're recording. I think the ones they're showing are probably 60 FPS, and they're probably cutting it in half. I would think it would be about a second and a half. Now they might have slowed it down less than that, and I could be wrong, but it didn't feel like 2 whole seconds. Right? 2 seconds is quite a long time. And it was a little iffy, but they were pretty quick on the review. They said it was a very nice slow one into the net. And then the Canucks, a solid third period. And then they get to overtime and they just try to do too much. Horvat's trying to make moves. Everyone's trying to make moves. They're trying to do it all themselves, and it just doesn't work. And it goes the other way. And
did you hear Boudreau's comments? He didn't mention Horvat. He says 53 was on the wrong side of the puck. But then he mentioned, and then Petey was on the wrong side. It's funny how he said 53. So maybe he'd go 53 and 40, or he'd go Horvat and Petey, but he didn't go. He went 53 and Petey.
Yeah. Is there a rift in the locker room? He's referring to by his number. Some good reporting. Yeah, it was, and it's just sad. It was a game they had to win in regulation to begin with if they were going to do anything. 7 points back of Vegas with 3 games against them. You got to win all 3 in regulation, then you got to make up 1 more point elsewhere. And now it's over, right? I mean, that was they failed to end an OT. Tyler Myers fires it 13 feet wide of the net with a second to go. That was just kind of told the story of that game a little bit.
Did you see the replays, Parker, where from one angle it looked like he just missed, and then from the other angle, yes, you're right.
Yeah, they show the replay from behind. It's like, it was off the toe. It goes, 6 feet high and wide. He's not a goal scorer. He's just not a goal scorer.
No, really? Yes.
Yeah.
Quick question for you. You know how, as you said, it's a story of the Canucks season, a very slow start, battle back in the third, but then spend so much energy, time, effort battling back. With these slow starts, I know Boudreau is quick to not shift blame, but he'll say, we got them ready. We talk about it in the room. The players know. But how much of that is actually coaching too? What do you think? Or is that truly a player execution thing? The coaches can only do so much. I don't know.
It's so hard to tell because at some point, if nothing's changing and it continues to be the same issue where they're slow in the first period, and how many games have they been down before? How many games have they been down going into the second or third period and battle back to make it interesting under Bruce Boudreau, right? Mm-hmm. And it's something that they've really overachieved late in games. I saw a graph. I don't remember who posted on Twitter, but it was a graph of sort of the expected goals share by like time of game. And for the Canucks, it was like they fell so far into the negative in the first, and then the second it like slowly ticked back up towards the middle. In the third period, it spikes back up right to 50%. like they basically put themselves in such a hole early and then dig their way out in the third. I don't get it. It's one of those things where it feels like if the same thing's happening over and over, they just gotta try harder. Like I don't know how to say it. But they just seem to come out of the gates really slow.
Yeah, and it's not as rudimentary as it's just start the fourth line. Okay, fine. Fourth line, they get through a shift, a big hit, fine. But that doesn't always mean the Canucks are going to score the first goal. Like it's just I'm flabbergasted. I'm at a loss of words, obviously. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. These are professional athletes.
Yeah, and they're showing up slow and then they get good later. I don't know if other teams just run out of gas in the third period, if the Canucks just get better as the game goes on. And I feel like it's got to be the latter. Because I mean, these are, like you said, they're professional athletes. They have conditioning. They can play, 18 minutes a night and they should be fine.
Yeah.
But I guess it all sort of comes down to, is it the players who are just being sort of lazy, or is it the coach? And there's not much we can really know. But there have been interesting conversations around the coach this week.
Yes.
Which is, in a vacuum, it's crazy, right? You look at what this team has done since December 4th, right? That game against Pittsburgh, December 4th. Or maybe the game was the 3rd, something like that. I don't know. It was those 2 days, 3rd and the 4th.
Yes.
You look at what this team has done in really the last 4 months, right? 4 months to the day. And they've been one of the best, statistically, at least on the standings, one of the better teams in hockey, right?
Yes.
Just flat out. And you look at that and you say, wow, old coach, they did bad. New coach, they do really good. Keep new coach, right? Like it seems seems really cut and dry. They have
even a caveman could do. Yes.
They have him on a team option for next year. You look at wins and losses and you say, yeah, why would you get rid of him?
Yeah.
But then you think about, it's a new management group. New management groups will want to get their guy, right? That's usually what they do. There's the whole, his lack of playoff success in the past. And look, the team's got to get to the playoffs, I think, a little bit before you worry about that too much. But he plays sort of a fast and loose style where you go out there and you have fun and you try not to get too far behind the play. And you see it help the team and you see it hurt the team. But the problem is when you get to the playoffs, it's usually something that hurts the team. But again, you got to get there. So it really depends on what they want to prioritize. Boudreau says he wants to stay.
Yep.
We've heard very little from, we haven't heard that much about whether or not management wants to keep him around. But if they're thinking long-term, Boudreau might not be their guy. I mean, you look at Pittsburgh, that's not the way they did it in Pittsburgh, right? They didn't have that high-flying, fast and loose style. What are your sort of thoughts here?
I have quite a few of them. You can't argue with the success that Boudreau's had. The team's not a top 5 team, or not even top 10 actually with the recent slide, but they're still a top 16 team since he's been here. So let's say they're a playoff caliber team for the last 4 months. I agree with you, Parker. I've heard others say that, and even Halford and Brough were talking about that. Brough has a source, or Halford has a source that Brough does, that said a month ago that maybe Alvin and Rutherford aren't sold on Boudreau's, that what they call a lack of organization when it comes to coaching, when it comes to systems. And you can kind of see that if his press conferences and if his media availabilities are any indication of how he coaches, popular, likable, great motivator. But I can't judge how much of an X is an old guy, how detailed he is. It's so tough to say, but that's what you have assistant coaches for too. So I throw all that out and I just simply say, look how the Canucks feel about themselves. Look how confident they are. Look how he got Besser's game going. He got PD's game going for sure. And I don't think this is one where you overthink it. I think if he wants to come back, you extend him by 1 or 2 years, because it's kind of weird just to go into the second year of a 2-year contract and then you're done. That's lame duck, right? That's kind of weird. Yeah. So one other thing, Parker, I was thinking though too is how much of this is a business decision from a standpoint of the fans love him. The players seem to like him. I won't say love him. The media seems to really enjoy him, especially compared to past guys. How much of it is a business decision where, or maybe they don't care if you don't re-sign him and don't extend him and let him walk? Do the fans revolt a little bit, even more than they are doing so right now? What do you think of that? Or do you think that's not a big factor?
I think it shouldn't be a concern, but it probably is one. And again, it's sort of part of the job in a big hockey market like this one, is that it's something that you got to sort of consider. I think that this management group is fresh enough that they can get away with anything for a little bit, right? They have that it's sort of that honeymoon phase where you can sort of get away with, you can go out and be like, hey, look, we want to play a style that is not reserved, but structured and physical. And we're going to grind out wins because right now that's the skill level that this team has. And that's how they need to get wins. So we're going with a different guy and he's going to be our guy. It's a risky move though, because right now you have the most beloved coach per game, right? Like no coach has gotten more love in their first what has been 40 games than Bruce Boudreau has, right?
He's got Chance named after him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that coaches don't have, right?
Yeah.
But it is if they want to play it safe, there is no risk in keeping Boudreau because they're like hindsight. If things go terribly next season and the coaching's not good, well, they can always say, well, I mean, he was great last year, right? Why wouldn't we have re-signed him? And hindsight's 2020, all that stuff. But if they go out and they hire someone different, there's always that risk that that new voice doesn't click, things don't work, the players don't, they just it falls apart, and then you look really bad.
No, I agree. And do you mind putting up Go Canucks Gus quote? I want to see the team giving Boudreau one full season to work and see where they are by then. So yeah, how about a Boudreau training camp? How about a Boudreau exhibition season and one full season? Kind of what you were just saying is why not? I just simply think they shouldn't overthink it. That's what I keep coming back to in my mind.
Right. And again, that is fair. But if they don't think he's their guy and they think that a different coach gets them an extra 4 points next season, right, then they have to do that, right? Like if you genuinely think you can improve the team in any way, especially a way that doesn't affect your salary cap, you should take it. And that's tricky. And he is older. He does say he wants to just coach forever. So I mean, theoretically, you could keep him around for 6 years if you wanted to. But realistically, maybe he coaches for 1, 2, maybe 3 more years.
Yeah.
And in theory, that's going to be right in the window. Hopefully, fingers crossed. If that's right in the window, do you want to be making a coaching change then if he's like retiring or something along those lines? It really depends on how far in the future you want to look.
You know what's interesting, Parker? I vlogged about this on the weekend. Rarely do we hear of a head coach finishing his contract and then they hire a new coach. It's usually a guy gets fired, right? Hired to get fired, or the coach steps, like Paul Maurice, steps down before he gets canned. But rarely do you just hear of a coach finishing off his contract and then a seamless transition to the new guy. It's always more kind of what's the word? Just kind of more disruptive than that. It's kind of strange. Yeah. But I guess that's the whole nature of the beast, right?
Yeah, and it really falls down to people like job security. They don't want to coach with 1 year left on their deal. And so they usually get that next year, and then if they're not doing good, they're done. Like Travis.
The word I was looking for was tumultuous. Dexter gave abrupt, which is good, but I meant to say tumultuous. Thank you. Sorry about that.
I mean, it almost happened with Travis Green, right? They could have not brought him back, and they could have hired Bruce Boudreau out of the gate this offseason, and things probably would have been a lot better. This year, we might be talking about the push for the playoffs a little bit later into April. It is definitely more tumultuous. I think that's definitely fair. But I mean, even if they were to move on from Boudreau, I mean, what options are there? That was my fear about Travis Green, right? I was like, who are you going to replace him with, right? Because you have to upgrade. You can't do if you're going to make the change, it can't be lateral. It can't be worse. You've got to find a coach who you genuinely believe can take this group of players that have played at a playoff pace over the last 40, 50 games and get a coach that you think will get that out of this team for a full 82. That's the bar right now. If this management group goes out and gets a coach and the Canucks miss the playoffs by 2 points next year, that's going to be looked at as a failure. Fair or not, it will be by the general fan base.
The Winnipeg Jets, Parker, are my second favorite team, a distant second to the Canucks, of course. So I've always liked Paul Maurice, actually. I know not a lot of Winnipeg Jets playoff success, but I've always thought that I like the way that team plays, and I think they nurture their stars well. So, I know we're not going to spend too much time talking about replacements because we're not even there yet, but I've always liked Maurice, but I think he just wore out, he did his time in Winnipeg.
Yeah, it's tricky because every single coach you try to hire has probably been fired somewhere else, right?
True.
That's just sort
Yep.
of the way it is, and
Exactly. Yeah.
that's the scary thing, right? You can go out and you can get someone who's proven but has failed elsewhere, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
Maurice did fine in Winnipeg, and it's sort of the way most coaches work, right? They do good for a few years and then something breaks, like Vigneault, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly. Great
just
point.
just just eventually things just stop working seemingly everywhere he goes, and they got to go get someone new, or
Hmm.
you can go get someone who hasn't been a head coach before. Then you're taking a real risk,
Yeah.
and then it looks and it's really tricky because you go for a guy who's known but has been fired, or you go for a guy who's unknown and could be terrible.
Yeah. I got one more Bruce Boudreau question for you, Parker. Do you believe in your heart of hearts that he is or he isn't an Alvin type of guy, or do you not worry about that even?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at it's so hard to tell, right? Because we haven't heard much from Alvin, right? He's at a couple
Yeah.
of press conferences, and he seems like your classic Swedish guy, right? Kind of quiet, does his own thing, right? You've seen the Sedins, you've seen Alex Edler, you like very similar, that Swedish style, and
Yep.
Boudreau is very maybe in a calculated way more fun and goofy, and I don't remember what the word you used earlier was, but just sort of more bubbly, I guess,
Yeah. Yep.
with everybody. And maybe that isn't something that they want, right? Maybe they do want structure. Maybe they said, "Hey, you guys have had your fun, right? Let's get, we're here to work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're gonna have someone here who's gonna work you, and you're gonna work for them, and you're gonna win hockey games. And it's not supposed to be that fun, right? It's gonna be fun because you're playing hockey, but it's not gonna be we're just gonna go out there and play offense, and if we lose, whatever, right?
Mhm.
It really depends what they're looking for.
Hey man, Jasker and Lecture Style. He says, Parker, you would make a great coach. You need to make players throw up more at training camp.
I don't think I think I'd be a great minor hockey coach. I don't think I'm cut out for the NHL right now.
Yeah, cut your teeth in the minors and we'll see where you are in about 5 or 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they'd be taking me that seriously, uh, on the bench. Um, so I guess, overall, where do you think this ends up?
Truly, if they take my advice, what's Clay's advice? It's not to overthink this. I think you do extend him by 2 years, and then now you have a 3-year window after the season, and then you can actually fire, as we talked about, you can fire him or he can quit somewhere, resign somewhere in those 3 years. I think if you don't re-sign him, I think it's a bad decision, and I think you got to give him a chance to prove, see what he can do with a full year. Yeah, then are you in a Tortorella territory though, where if he after his first full year you don't like it, so you can him right away? I think that's projecting too much. I would extend him. I would. I really would.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, and again,
Yeah.
there's the whole regular season versus playoff thing that sort of
Yeah.
looms over him, right? Where he's terrible in the playoffs, but he gets a lot of the team in the regular season. You can't win a playoff series, you don't make it, right? I mean, sure, you things can go really bad, and you can end up like Toronto,
Mm.
where you have a really good team that wins the regular season, can't win the playoffs. They're having more fun over there than we are right now.
Yeah.
They have a
Yeah.
guy who scored 47 goals in his last 47 games.
It's
We
pretty
don't
good.
have that. That would be cool. Um, so I think I would take some regular season success, and then maybe he's not a great playoff coach, but you got to get there
Yeah.
before you can win, right? Most teams don't win the cup their first time in the playoffs with a core, right? That usually takes a
Mhm.
few tries. Look at Tampa Bay; they looked so solid, and they got run out of the building by Columbus on their first real go, right? It's
Mhm.
you got to get there
Yeah.
before you can win games.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. Let's have this conversation about why can't he win the big one once we actually have a chance to win a one. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Agreed. And I like the way you titled today's episode. Should the Canucks bring back Boudreau? A lot of B's there, and we both sound like we agree on yes.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think I think why mess with a good thing?
Hmm.
And sure, maybe it goes bad, but guess what? Someone else could go bad too,
Yep.
pretty easily. Um, all this to say, the Canucks have not been good lately. The Vancouver Canucks have come into a real playoff push and have won 3 of their last 12 games at a time where they needed to basically win 2 out of every 3 the entire rest of the way. They fell apart. A couple of OTLs in there, which have been painful to watch. But they cannot get wins anymore. Demko has been great. Halak has been fine, and the team in front of them has not been.
Parker, picture this. Let's go back to March 26th when you and I were hanging out together at Monkey Nine Brewing with some of our friends. The Canucks had just beaten Colorado. They had taken a hard-earned point off of Minnesota, and they smoked Dallas. We climbed to within 3 points of a playoff spot with not too many games in hand, like other teams owing games on us. Like it was actually almost equatable where we could say we were 3 points out of a playoff spot. And look what's happened since then. We get smoked by St. Louis, then we lose again St. Louis and get no points out of it. And then we lose to Vegas, a team that was just as desperate as us. Isn't it crazy how much just a week and a half, what a difference it makes? Now, what are we, 8 or 9 points out? It's crazy how because we only played 3 games. Yeah.
I haven't looked at it. There's no need to. I think they're 8 points back of Vegas. It turned so quickly.
It's nuts. Yeah.
And that's why the odds were low, right? Because it's really easy for a team to go and win. Sure, you can go win 5 games in a row, but guess what? You'll probably lose 3 or 4 in a row at some point as well. That game against the Stars, because that they sort of faltered right at the loss to Detroit and then Calgary and then Buffalo, and things were kind of done there. And then they beat Colorado, and then they take a point off of Minnesota, and then they run Dallas out of their own building.
Yeah.
And it feels like, oh, well, if they just do this, they'll be fine, right? They can win if they just play like this. And then they stop playing like that. And they get crushed by St. Louis twice. They fall apart in OT yesterday and the first period and the second period. And it's, this team just doesn't have the consistency.
Yeah.
They don't have, they have these stretches where things are great. See December when they went 8-0. And they have stretches where they lose 9 out of 12 games, including losses to New Jersey and Detroit and Buffalo. Actually, they beat New Jersey. That was a dumb thing of me to say. But they've lost. They lose some big games in crunch time. Yeah, and they had control of their own destiny, and they blew it.
And Parker, I know all of our shows starting in about 3 weeks will be fueled by what's going to happen in the off season. But back in January, in February, even I would not have been an advocate of blowing it up or even moving pieces of our core. But honestly, now that I've seen kind of the month of March and the start of April and seeing where we are, I'm completely open. I'm being honest with you. I'm completely open to a major change. I really am, because what are we waiting for? Truly. What are we waiting for?
If you can leave this core together, and you might end up with a team that is 3rd in the Pacific next year.
Yeah.
And the year after that. And the year after that. What does that do? Right? You end up like the Minnesota Wild from, basically the last 15 years, right? A team that has always been fine, right? You'll finish 11th in the league, 11th to 14th in the league every year. Yeah. You'll play 6 playoff games. Maybe you win a round and then lose in the second round. What does that do, right? That doesn't get you anywhere. That's basically what the Canucks had in the West Coast Express era. They build an excellent team that gets within 60 minutes of winning. You need that, right? You look at these teams that have built themselves to take repeated runs, and they're the teams that are going to win cups, right? Tampa Bay has done it twice. Colorado is going to be in the mix, and Toronto is going to be in the mix.
Yeah.
These are teams that have built themselves to have a few runs, right? And that's all you get. You can build the best team in the world, and you'll get 3 or 4 chances to be the best out of 16 teams.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of luck involved, but you can make yourselves lucky. And this team isn't in that position where they're going to get that luck. We look at the bubble. They were a team that went farther than they should have. Well, they beat Minnesota pretty handily. They beat St. Louis, who just didn't look ready to play. And they got to game 7 against Vegas, but they didn't deserve to be in game 7 against Vegas, right? Their goalie got hot. And sure, you're allowed to have a good goalie, but that's not building for success, right?
Yeah.
That's not a team that's going to repeatedly have runs. I mean, we saw it now. They haven't made it for the last 2 years, and they've been well out of it for most of those 2 years. Why wouldn't you? This isn't working.
Yeah.
Right? You have no prospect you have no prospects in the cupboard, really. Jack Rathbone's your only real blue chip prospect, and even then, he's not like a top 30 prospect in the NHL, probably.
Correct.
Maybe he's close, but he's old for a prospect. You got to do there's no help coming. You can have guys get better. Like JT Miller got better. That's great, but most players aren't going to get extraordinarily better, right? We're not going to see Brock Besser score 45 goals next year, most likely. Yeah. We're not going to see Elias Pettersson score 47 goals in 47 games like Austin Matthews is doing. They don't, as Patrick Allvin said, we don't have that superstar. They have 2 stars, 2 very high-end stars, now 3, I guess.
Yep.
But they don't have the Sidney Crosby. They don't have the Connor McDavid or the Austin Matthews. Those guys are hard to get. But the way this team is currently built, it's not a team that's going to be pushing to make the finals for 4 years in a row. It's just not going to happen.
And it's funny, Parker, as you say that, yes, I do want to get to Allvin's comments in a second, but just because we're saying there has to be change, it doesn't have to be a complete rebuild either. Like, remember, we've gone through 8 years of Jim Benning and his idea of building a team. I can't wait to see what Allvin, Castonguay, Granato, Clancy, Rutherford behind them. I can't wait to see what they do, because who knows? They might be able to truly retool, cut some fat, trim the fat from the edges. They might be able to change things pretty darn quickly, and I'm all here. I'm here for that. I think that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, it's a little scary because things could go the wrong way. But again, I think you can have that. We can be stuck in the middle for 5 years and be a middling team, or we can try to change something. And it'll either work and the team will be really good, or it won't work and the team will be really bad. And hopefully they can build that into something good eventually, which would suck. But again, it would also suck to get knocked out in the first round every year like they did when I was growing up.
Great point. Great point.
So it's the goal is to win it all.
Yep.
This team isn't going to do it.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. Guys like Jason Dickinson aren't going to be the piece that pushes them over the edge. Getting guys like that in free agency. So they got to do something.
Can we talk about Patrick Allvin's comments for a few minutes? Is that cool?
Yeah, go ahead. I didn't read the whole article.
So it's a great article, great interview with Patrick Johnson of the province, and talked about Allvin's rise through the hockey world, how he got to Pittsburgh, how he got to Vancouver. But really, there are 3 things that a lot of people were talking about. And the biggest one was we don't have the superstar. He didn't even say we don't have a superstar. He said, we don't have the superstar. We are not a contending team. And therefore, everyone has something to prove. So I vlogged about it today, but I'm curious for you, Parker. I basically said, it depends on your bar of superstar. If you're saying all stars are superstar, which is way too low, then the Canucks have a few superstars. If you're saying generational player, then of course they don't, because that's only Crosby, McDavid, and Ovechkin recently. But if you're talking about guys that can lead a team, can be elite, can come through in the crunch, I'd say I agree with them. It was shocking for me to hear, but I would say right now, as it stands, I don't think there is a superstar on this roster. I think PD Hughes and even Demko as the goalie, I think they have the potential to be, but I don't think right now. And then I even went as far to say, I think in our history, we've only had one guy who can almost be considered a superstar, and that's Bure. I think Henrik was awesome, but I wouldn't call him a superstar. I'd say really skilled, great player.
So what do you think? Yeah. It does depend on your bar, right? And I don't know what my bar exactly is. I mean, you give me a name, you say, is Connor McDavid a superstar? I'm like, if it's Austin Matthews superstar, is Sidney Crosby, is Adam Fox. Yeah, right. Like you get names like that, and you sort of know it when you hear it. I mean, I feel like you got to be a super, like, there's stars and there's like elite players and things like that. And I think Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes, Thatcher Demko, JT Miller, they are all stars. They are all elite players. The superstar for me, that's, you got to be like top 3, top 5 at your position. Right? Like, there's only a handful in the league, right? You know, you want to name the top 5 goalies in the league. Well, there's 5 that are better than Demko right now, and and that are playing at a higher level, right? I mean, Shesterkin right now is a superstar, and he's got that potential to remain at that level for a long time. Carey Price was a superstar. Jonathan Quick was a superstar. But right now, Demko's not there yet, and he has the ability to, but he's not a superstar. Quinn Hughes has the ability to get there, and he is at the top end of star in my mind, but he's not one of the best defensemen in the NHL. He's probably top 15, which is great. That is great to have. But Cale Makar has passed him. Adam Fox has passed him. Roman Josi has passed him. You know, there's a handful of names that you'll put higher. And, you know, I feel like if you're going to be a superstar, you have to be, you're in the conversation for these awards, right? You know, Patrice Bergeron is a superstar because he's won how many Selkies now? You know, if you're not in the conversation to win the Norris as a defenseman, or at the beginning of the year, if you're not having good odds to at least be in the conversation, you're probably not a superstar. And I think that's fair. Patrick Allvin has had Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin.
Exactly.
Those are 2 superstars right there. And Marc-Andre Fleury, right? like some good pieces to have that the Canucks don't have that level yet. They have guys who could turn into that, but they're not there yet. But how do you even get those guys? They're not really in a position to do that, right? Which is a tricky place to be.
So I had no problem with what Allvin said, Parker, because to me, when he says those 3 things in tandem, when he says we don't have the superstar, we're not a contending team, and therefore every player still has to prove himself, has something to prove. To me, that is basically busting the door wide open for, and him basically laying down the gauntlet saying, therefore, I have the right to make changes. I didn't sign any of these guys. I didn't bring any of these guys in except for Travis Dermott. So these are none of my guys. I didn't extend any of these guys. And I think we all know that anyways, but I think by him saying this very intentionally and very deliberately, he's basically laying the groundwork saying, so don't be surprised. Don't be surprised. And I think that's pretty cool. I wouldn't have said that 2 months ago.
They're not going to be complacent, right? I think that's important. They're gonna try to make the team better, and that's what they need to do. And whether it works or whether it doesn't, hey, I'm glad it's them giving it a shot and not the person who was here 4 months ago. Because I think Jim Benning came into these seasons saying we think we're a playoff team. We think that, you know, we've got these guys who are really good players, and it didn't work, right? They weren't a playoff team. They weren't a contending team. These players that are supposed to be the core of this team underperformed. So it's kind of nice to see someone come in and be like, yeah, no, we see this too. Like, we see that things aren't working. Let's change it, right? Why stick with it? And at that point, it is nice to hear.
I agree. So can we? Well, I don't mean to be so bossy tonight. Can we talk about Tucker Pullman for a couple minutes?
Sure. No, this is
great. That cool?
This makes my life so much easier if you just tell
I figured you've been carrying the show for like the first 50 weeks. I figure I could at least do one show once in a while and contribute.
Tell me about Tucker Pullman.
I feel bad for him, man. Like, he missed 25, 26 games. He has a couple setbacks. Then he plays yesterday, and he only plays the first period, Parker, and then he doesn't come out for the second period. And then Boudreau confirms that it's the recurring injury, his concussion, and I don't want to say now, it's too far to project that this is another Michael Furlan thing, but it's scary. I forget about his performance, forget about his contract for a second. As a man, as a friend, a family person, I don't know about his family. That's scary to come back and play whatever 6 or 7 minutes, and then who knows how long he's gonna be out for. I feel bad for him. I really do.
Yeah, concussions are just a scary thing, right? Like, they can just completely derail any progress can just be derailed like that, right? You go out, he played 4.5 minutes last night.
That's it, eh?
You
Wow.
get a headache just from skating hard, right? Exerting yourself. And you're just thinking, oh no, right? Like like there's no, the science isn't that great
Yeah.
around brain injuries, right? There's like advanced concussion clinics and all these things and that are working to understand it and doing the best that they can with all the knowledge they have. But the brain's weird. It gets hurt and it just doesn't respond sometimes. And I mean, yeah, I don't really know what else to say. It's super
Mhm.
unfortunate, and you see it a lot in every sport, right?
Yeah.
Especially contact ones like hockey and football. Um, yeah, it's super unfortunate just to deal with anything like that.
And this isn't meant to sound insensitive, but before his injury, people were already talking about, as you mentioned, Dickinson, who's been a massive disappointment. I'd say Tucker Pullman has been another one. Can you move some of those middle contract guys, those guys making $2.5–3.5 million? He would be a prime candidate, but then he's going to be very hard to move if, I'm not saying it will, but if this injury persists and is long term, that's going to be a very hard contract to move. And let's not worry about LTIR and all that kind of thing yet. But
Yeah.
it's just bad timing. I feel bad for him. And then from a pure hockey asset management standpoint, it could also be quite disastrous as well.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a good contract from the start.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, barring that, it's unfortunate. Yeah, concussions are wild. It is not. My hot take is that concussions are bad.
Give me one other hot take. Would you rather have a 26-year-old Jason Dickinson for 2.65 for 2 more seasons, or a 28-year-old Tucker Pullman for 2.5 for 3 more seasons?
I'd rather have Jason Dickinson.
Yeah.
I feel like the contract expires sooner. The money's almost the same. And I think he's more tradable, even barring injuries. I think he's a little more tradable because of his past, right?
Yes.
Because he has that little bit of that cachet from his Dallas days.
Yep, that's fair. Remember how excited we were when they signed him?
That seemed like a great move. It was a good deal. I was golfing that day. I was like, nice. That's a good pickup.
Tidy
I was
piece of
wrong.
business, they say. Yeah. Well,
yeah. It felt tidy. It wasn't great. Do we want to go to the people? I think that was kind of all we had topic wise, unless there's anything else you wanted to hit on.
Let's do it.
All right, this is your time to get some questions in. Edmund, with kind of a good question here, saying, would you say that the biggest moves are to get rid of bad contracts? I'm going to sort of expand on this. Do you think priority one is clearing cap space, or do you think it is making the roster better?
I think you can have both, but I would start with clearing the cap space, actually.
Yeah,
I would.
And I think that's sort of what it sounds like they might be leaning towards. And I think
Yeah.
it's tricky to make the roster better with no more money. But it really depends on what they prioritize, right? And if they say, hey, we're going to be a little worse next year to get rid of these contracts, like maybe Oliver Ekman-Larsson or Tyler Myers, or Tucker Pullman or Jason Dickinson or anyone down those lines. Hopefully they don't have to spend to do that. I mean, we've heard that Tyler Myers might actually have positive value out there, which big, tall defenseman, I guess, big guy that can hit is valuable. I think if they can get anything like that, they take it. But yeah, I think it could hurt the team next year, which, I mean, we're used to it, right?
If you're a betting man, do you think Garland's on this team at the start of next season?
I do. I think even underperforming Connor Garland is still worth the money he gets paid. And I think he has a positive value. And I think that's all you really need, right? Again, if every player on your team outperforms their contract, you have a really good team. That's kind of the world we live in. And I think Connor Garland has shown better than what he has been this year. And I think he can get back to, even if he gets back to the middle of last year and this year, I think that's a pretty good player for the money he makes.
Yeah, you know how excited I was when we got him. I didn't know anything about him, but I watched one highlight package and then I was sold. So I still have high hopes for him as well. But I hear more and more people, Parker, talking about the trade as this season comes to a close, saying, "Oh, it'd be nice to have that 12 million in cap space and Dylan Gunther ripping it up in the in the juniors right now." But hindsight again, always 2020.
Well, I did say that the day the trade happened. I said I love Connor Garland, but I don't love getting rid of all your bad contracts that have 1 year left to pick up one that has 7.
Yeah.
That seemed a little bit short-sighted.
Yeah.
Even if I do like Connor Garland a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't seem to have gone too well. And it
Yeah.
might end up being one of Jim Benning's worst deals, which is shocking to say. But it genuinely could be, right? Getting rid of a first round pick and taking on a big cap hit, and getting a player who underperformed here. I mean, that's just a bunch of bads at
Yeah.
one time.
And as the king of positivity at the time, Parker, I was trying to defend it. I really was trying to defend it, but it was such an obvious win now move. And then 4 months later, he's not here. Like, what's that saying? Oh.
Yeah, no, it's a mess.
Yeah.
It is a mess.
Yeah.
But that can't be taken into account this offseason.
Fair enough.
Because it's sunken cost, right? That's done. That happened. It's unfortunate, but again, they have full autonomy and they have full what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think right now. It's
look,
11
our
PM.
words
They,
for me.
they're not responsible for what the old management team did. They're shielded from it. So, they have free reign there.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. You want to pick another one?
Sure. Actually, Jasker, I like Jarhead's question actually from 1059. What hand? I guess it's kind of cool. What handedness are you guys? Why is right hand D harder to find when the majority of people are right handed? I'll let the actual hockey players speak first. That's you.
I genuinely don't know.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre to me. I wonder if it's because left-handers are more rare, that in like minor leagues, left-handed defensemen are more important. So maybe they get, brought in earlier, right? It's like, hey, well, we have a bunch of guys lined up for this rep team on the right-hand side. We need to develop some guys left-hand side, gives us more attention, and then they get better. But I don't know. I genuinely don't know, because like 80-90% of people are right-handed.
How about hockey players though? What's the percentage of hockey players?
It's got to still be. It's got in the NHL. I'm not sure.
Right. In the NHL, right.
Closer to even, because of handedness. It is a really weird. It's a weird phenomenon that I can't explain. I'm sure there's articles out there about it though.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm just thinking of our own forward group. Like, you think of all the good forwards, Miller, or everyone except Besser and Garland and Chason are right-handed. I mean, sorry, are left-handed, isn't it? Like PD, Miller, Horvat, all those guys are lefties.
Yeah, there's a 2-to-1 ratio of left-handers to right-handed shots.
Interesting.
And only 10% of the population is left-hand dominant. So,
Wow.
there's an article about it. I just searched why are most NHL players left-handed, and there's an article from Pure Hockey right at the top.
Yeah.
So go read that.
What do you shoot?
I'm righty.
You're righty?
Yeah.
Everything like golf and writing and like
right-handed everything. Yep.
Yeah.
It's weird. People are different.
Same, but I don't. My shot doesn't even count. I might as well have no hands. Oh, that didn't sound right, but okay. Anyways.
Yeah. You want to grab another one here?
Sure. Let's see. Let's go. I don't know. Do you want to go serious or fun?
Serious is it's 11 p.m. on a Monday. We can have a little fun, right?
Let's do one more Jarhead one from 11:02. What would Alvin say to Benning if he ran into him at the bar?
I think you would just stare at him. I think you would just stone face look at him like, what have you done? I don't think he'd say too much.
No. A sarcastic answer would be, thanks for making my job so difficult. I guess a serious answer would be, thanks for making my job so difficult.
Yeah.
That's tough. That's rough.
Yeah. Scrolling here.
Peter Wynn at 11 asked you, he says, Parker, Miller, Garland, Besser are all 3 Canucks next season based on the rumors. Yes or no?
All 3, I doubt it, just because, again, they got to make some changes.
Yeah.
And I feel like those are, I think Miller's gone.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's just because you can't pay him the money that he deserves. Not saying he's greedy. I think he genuinely deserves, to get a $70 million contract, right? Or around there. I just don't think the Canucks can afford that. For where their window is going to be. And I think I think getting rid of Miller makes it a lot easier to keep Garland and Besser. I think Besser, if you go 6x6 or something like that, 6.5, whatever, I think you're fine there. I think Besser sort of played at around 6 level. And I think Garland is easy to keep.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you got to go to Miller pretty much right as soon as the season ends and at least get an indication. And it doesn't mean you have to trade him that day on May 1st, but it does mean you have options, whether it's at the draft, whether it's at the start of the season, or whether it's at the trade deadline. But I think you do got to talk to people pretty much right away at the risk of it leaking. But you got to know. You got to know.
Yeah, it's like what they did with Tyler Mott at the deadline, right? They tried to work a contract out. They were too far apart. We said, all right, our only option is to get something for you. And that's the boat that they're going to be with JT Miller. I think the most value probably comes around at the draft. Just because then, the picks are for this year instead of next year. And, usually sooner is better, although we've heard that the next draft might be better. So I think, you can go to him in off season and say, look, all we can do, we can give you the 8.5, but we can only do 4 or 5 years. Like that's genuinely all we can do. I understand if you're trying to find more elsewhere. If you want to play here, this is what we can do for you. If you want to play elsewhere, we get it. We'll find you a team that you want to go to. Right. And again, it's business. And it's something that, he definitely understands, right? He wants, if they don't think he can get, if he doesn't think he can get the money here, he's going to say, okay, I want to go to like here, here, here. And the Canucks say, okay, let's talk to them and let's allow you to negotiate with them while we put a trade in the works. And they'll say, okay, we're good on this contract. Let's figure out the deal. And, they can sort of work together on it. Everyone sort of has the same goal here, right? JT Miller wants to get paid. The Canucks want certainty. They want to either keep him forever or trade him. And there's no need to have bad blood or anything there. And you just have a conversation and get it done.
Yeah. And I keep going back to your point about Garland. That's a really good point, because that is a nice contract. So as much as that might be appealing to another team, it should be appealing to our team too. We just got to get him playing a bit better for sure.
Yeah. It's a bad year.
Yeah.
It happens. It happens to a lot of players. Even if he stays at this level, he's still basically performing to his contract. It's not great. It's not what we were hoping for. But it's not the worst thing in the world. I don't think you're on the clock to trade Connor Garland.
Right.
And even if you were, I think, again, it's something you can do at the trade deadline, right? I don't think the clock's not really ticking on him. You have him locked up for a couple more years. You're fine there. And then I think Besser, again, I think if he wants to take the 7.5 for 1 year, that's his prerogative. But I think you're in a good boat to offer him a longer term at a little bit lower money based on the fact that he underperformed a bit this year and hasn't really been his rookie self ever. And again, I think you can probably pull some value out of that too.
It's fascinating. It really, really is. I'm kind of excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And I'm scared.
Yeah, we can be both.
Yeah. I wasn't reading comments as we went here. So again,
me are so riveted to your answer. So,
oh, great. Now I got to scroll.
Actually, if I may, since we're in the spirit of honesty, people have been asking, when are you bringing your post-game live streams back? And if you are okay, that was the first question was, are you all right? And are you bringing them back? Good.
I'm good. I'm just kind of busy and tired. And I'm sad when the team loses, and I just don't feel like it sometimes. I've been close a couple times, and the Canucks lost, and I didn't feel like it. So we'll probably get a couple more in this year. We'll see how we feel next year, but there's just I haven't been that invested in the games.
Mm-hmm.
We had the one game that we watched last weekend. That was
Yeah.
fun, and
Yeah.
it was an awesome experience. And it was a lot easier to be invested in the game with all the people there and the fun game that it was. But these games, like you look at the game yesterday, that first period, I didn't want to watch the game after that. I turned it on again in the third, but after the way they were playing, it's like why should I feel obligated to spend my time watching them when they're putting that bad of a performance out there?
Yeah.
And put me first. I don't need to deal with that. So
Good.
that's
No,
my
good, awesome answer, because people wanted to know, and it's good that they care too, which is awesome. King RJ, right at the bottom, he just asked us. I think it's a great question. What key AHLers do you see Alvin re-signing, and who will walk?
I'm not very up to date on the contracts of the
Me
AHLers, but
neither.
I guess I can pull it up. Non-roster. So Phil Giuseppe is going to be a UFA.
Yep.
And I think, as far as I can tell, he's been pretty good. He's almost a point per game in the
Mm-hmm.
AHL. And could be a decent depth piece for the NHL squad. He seems like a guy that you'd want to bring back
Yep.
potentially. Sheldon Rempel, I think, has been lighting it up, right? Yeah,
Two
he's
Sheldons. Yeah.
over a point per game. It's a team that's playing pretty good hockey. Sheldon Dries, you mentioned both Sheldons.
Yeah.
The rest of the forwards, I'm not too knowledgeable on.
Right.
Dowling signed for another year. Carson Fox signed for another year.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on the forwards there?
No, I think I don't think so much about what their contracts are. I just think of who's going to be up here, and I'm not sure if Giuseppe or Bailey or Rempel are ever going to be up here, but that doesn't mean they're not important. They're obviously very important to the depth of the organization overall, and that's why they're in the playoff spot this year. But I get more excited about seeing Klimovich coming up, maybe the next 1 or 2 seasons, or at least having another really good training camp. But to answer King RJ's question, if he's actually talking about contracts, yeah, no, I agree with you. I would re-sign Giuseppe for sure, because I think he's the one that he almost got a look up here. And then on the back end, there's no one that excites me like Sautner, Juleson, Stevens, and Bowie. All of their contracts expire at the end of the season. Only Rathbone's an RFA, and Jet Wu still got another year. And really, it's Rathbone and Wu that I think are 1 and 2 years away, respectively. So
Yeah, and you look at these guys, and a lot of them are you can pay them more money with no consequence, right?
yep,
Other than to the wallet, right? You look at Phil Giuseppe, he makes $750 this year, but in the minors he only makes $450,
yep,
right? So you can bump his minor salary up to be the same as his cap hit, and that's a big raise for him, and it would be good motivation to stay unless other teams are lining up to give him a spin. Sheldon Rempel, 750 cap hit. His minor salary is only 125, right? You say,
yeah,
hey, we'll give you 400 grand next year. The way you're playing, you're putting up over a point per game. You might get some actual NHL playing time.
yeah,
Those are some things that you can do to make that work. Jack Rathbone's an RFA.
yeah,
I'm sure that'll get done. That'll probably just be a bridge deal.
yep,
Because he hasn't shown anything up here really. So
yep,
he's signed up for a year or two at $1 million or whatever it ends up being.
yeah,
Because right now, I mean, Jack Rathbone makes nothing right now, right?
yeah.
925 cap hit. In the minors, he makes 70K.
Wow.
He's playing professional hockey and he makes less than, someone with some decent tenure somewhere, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
he's not doing, he's not doing too great. And again, you give him a bridge deal where his cap hit and his minor salary are the same. Really easy for him to say yes to that, right?
yeah,
Spencer Martin is a UFA. I think he's a piece you want down there. It is tricky because they have 3 goalies down there who are, and you can only really have 2. But if you want to maybe take a shot on Spencer Martin being your backup next year, it seems a little risky. But it's something that you can try. I think they've got a lot of decent depth pieces down there, and they'll want to keep a good chunk of them.
Yeah, it's fascinating that Parker. I'm glad you mentioned Martin. The 3 goalies all have different situations. Martin is a UFA, DiPietro's an RFA, and Seelovs is signed for like 2 more years. So
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. But I do. And I know a lot of people are asking about Spencer Martin actually in the comments. I do see next season, of course, Demko's number one. I see it being Martin DiPietro and one veteran goalie that they'll find from somewhere for cheap, 900 grand, $1 million. And I actually think it'll be three guys competing for that backup spot. I think they're grooming Martin for it. But yeah, you got to have a competition. Obviously, you can't just come out of day one training camp and say it's going to be Demko and Martin. Everyone else, too bad, so sad.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm going to try to look up here who the UFA goalies are coming into this year. There's guys like Fleury. But that's obviously not the level they're going for. Koskinen, please no.
Oh gosh, I'd rather go in that.
Corey Schneider, who played yesterday,
and he won. Yes.
Yeah. Holtby, you want to go back to that? Well, Jack Campbell, Malcolm Subban, Spencer Martin's on this list. Alex Stalock is kind of up there. JF Berube. I thought he was old.
JF Berube?
Jean-Francois Berube.
I don't know who that is.
I've heard that. I've heard Berube before, and not Craig. Wasn't he like supposed to be a good goalie coming up? He was a 4th round pick a few years ago. I thought he was 35. He's 28. That's why I brought that up. Garrett Sparks.
Craig I remember Anderson,
him. Aaron Dell, the Hamburglar. There's not a lot of.
Yeah, it's thinning out pretty quick there, Parker. Yeah.
There's not. I think you're probably good going with someone like a Spencer Martin or something. Yeah. And hoping he can fill that role.
That's true. You're right. We liked what we saw of him and his very small audition, but it is a little bit risky.
It is risky.
Yep.
He's going to play 20, 25 games.
Yeah.
You see what happens when you have a bad backup. You have to play your starting goalie a lot, and they'll get worse throughout the year. And you have to play. You got to be like, all right, we're going to put Halak in anyways, and he's going to allow 7 goals. And
I thought you were talking hypothetically.
No, sure, yes. Allegedly, if you had a bad goalie, that could happen. Yes, sure.
Yeah, I hear you.
Anyway,
hey, are we coming up to our 1-year anniversary soon?
That would be next week.
Next week's show is our 1-year anniversary?
Next week's show will be, I think, 364 days, because April 12th was our first one. So it'd be the second week of April, third week of April, whatever it ends up being.
We got to do something fun for that.
Yeah. We'll
something more fun than our hockey team.
Yeah.
And there's no game, so it's not like we have to be sad if we lose.
I'll be sad anyways.
I'm declaring it. Next week will be a Cheer Up Parker episode. Cheer Up Parker party.
The Canucks are going to go 3-0. We're going to be right back in it. Just have to win 11 out of the next 12. We can do it.
That's easy.
We just got to beat Vegas twice, and Dallas, and Minnesota, and Calgary.
Yeah.
And LA, and Edmonton. Oh no.
Thank you, Lucas, for the donation. Canucks After Dark, the 1-year anniversary special. Indeed, we're gonna do something fun. We'll do something.
We'll remember 15 minutes before, and we'll improvise.
We might even get on here 20 minutes before because it's so special.
Yep, we'll have more prep.
Remember the Cheer Up Parker party. Everyone remember the CUPP, the cup. Cheer Up Parker party. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Good to wrap up.
Sure.
All right. Thank you guys very much for joining us. If you missed any part of the show, you can rewind back to the beginning here on YouTube, or you can find it on your favorite podcast platform in about 30 minutes. We're here every Monday, 10 p.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. Eastern if you're crazy, or 6 a.m. in Europe, I guess. Yeah. I'm going to spend the next week on the couch watching the Masters. Clay, What are your plans for the next week?
Well, my son Jacob, speaking of going Eastern time, just that's where I was just before we came on here. I drove him to the airport because he flew out to Toronto for a big bowling tournament, actually a national tournament. Yeah, so I'm gonna get up early, follow his games, and then in the meantime, try and stay up for the 3 Canucks games, 2 away and 1 home, and we'll see what kind of mood we're in next week. Yeah, so enjoy the Masters, and I'll enjoy some bowling live streams. How's that?
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good one, and we'll see you next week.